Time, we'll start rolling. Let's review just a minute about what we finished talking on last Thursday. Last Thursday, we spent most of the time period on the National Counterterrorism Center, right? And they're a partnership between what? 2 or 3 agencies and 2 or 3 departments.
DOD, DOJ, CIA, FBI, and Homeland Security.
There you go. For those of you in Beckley who didn't hear him, it's DOJ, DOD, Homeland Security, CIA, FBI. They focus on identifying groups, terrorist groups, their capabilities, their plans, and emerging threats. They have a big area that they oversee. How many joint task force do we have going on right now according to this website? 104. At a minimum 104. Good. Then we talked a little bit about our Strategic Ops Center. We talked about one of the major parts of the Strategic Ops Center that I want you to remember is that they have an uninterrupted power supply. And why is that important?
Power goes down, they can't communicate, can't do much of anything.
Right, and their primary job is to provide intelligence and operational support, right? In the form of cell phones and satellite imagery. So if they don't have power, they can't provide any of that support to those field units. Know that they were focusing on borders, ports, colleges and universities, food supply, human rights, special events, the traveling public, particularly abroad, and our U.S. troops overseas. So, I want to switch gears a little bit, but not a whole lot, and talk about the counterterrorism action plan. Counterterrorism action plan. And I want to begin with this. One of the first things that they focus on with their counterterrorism action plan is, I'm going to move this camera, try to move it just a little bit so I can be out there where they can see me when I stand up. Can y'all hear me okay out there?
Yeah.
All right. One of the major things that they focus on with their counterterrorism action plan, and one of the first things that they tell you with this big, huge plan that you dive into, is that their plan is very fluid. They rely on evaluation and then change their operations based on that evaluation. So they don't do things the same way all the time. This counterterrorism plan is a framework, but the actual operation is very fluid. Because what are they trying to dodge? What are they trying to not have? Remember we talked about it in some of the earlier classes. It's the law of diminishing. Ow! I wouldn't drink that for a minute. The law of diminishing returns. Remember we talked about that? So they're constantly being fluid because they're trying to avoid the law of diminishing returns. They also acknowledge that the terrorist element is very, very, very good at adapting to new and changing methods of operation, so they have to be always constantly changing to meet those new and changing needs. Some of the major groups that this counterterrorism center focuses on is Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and I really like this one because, well, I don't like it, but I really think it's good that they added it in. Maybe that's the way I should say it because I don't like any of them. But I think it's good they added it in because it gives us an idea of how global that these folks are. And it is the Armed Forces of the Colombian Resistance. These folks are right on top of us. Right here, in our part of the world, just in the southern hemisphere. Now, while we talk a lot about Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIL, Al-Qaeda, what you have to know is these groups are all very independent and very different in a lot of ways. But they're all trying to promote one agenda. All right? And that's kind of the common theme behind this terrorism, counterterrorism center. Even though all of these groups are different and they operate on different planes, they all are promoting a common agenda. They all have their own identity. They're all promoting a common agenda. Right now, the fronts that we're working on in the fight against terrorism, we have active investigations going on in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iraq. I'm trying to think of the other. Where are we fighting at right now? Syria. I couldn't think of that to save me. Thank you all. Syria. And other places in the Middle East. They list the Middle East in general. They don't even call it, specify a country. They just list the Middle East. Also, East Africa is a really, really, really hot spot for Islamic terrorists. They have a lot of activity going on in East Africa. There is a small corner in northwest Africa that is also Islamic, hotbed for Islamic terrorism. The biggest hitch they got, and the thing they talk about that destabilizes East Africa the most, is Somalia. They say that Somalia is the kind of the hinge pin that keeps East Africa completely torn apart, keeps them from being able to go in and make that area more stable and be more effective in fighting terrorism there. Because as you all know, if you've seen the movie Black Hawk Down and all the other things going on, there is a real battle for power going on inside Somalia, and nobody knows who's winning. So having all of this information in mind, now the counterterrorism lists its goals. They have 5 goals. The counterterrorism action plan lists 5 goals. Number 1 seems a bit strange to me, and I'd like to hear from you all about it. I'd like for us to discuss it. Number 1 says their number 1 goal is accountable governance. Accountable governance. Somebody help me understand what accountable governance is and why.
Well, it's like where your boy Putin's back in Syria giving them weapons because he don't want their leader taken out of power.
Well, I like where you're going. You're thinking a whole lot farther ahead, and you're thinking military and active. Remember, we're talking about a framework here. Back up just a little bit, and let's think about and talk about more accountable governance, more on a political scale, more on from a political lens instead of your military type lens. I like where you're going, but let's back up just a little bit, look at it through a political lens. What is accountable governance, politically speaking?
When your political leaders are letting terrorists spend hot there, not giving help to your country.
You broke up on me that time. Try again. I mean, look on this volume.
When you've got countries that are letting terrorists spend, live there and grow there and not helping any other country identify them, things like that.
Now you're getting where I want you to be. Accountable governance and encouraging accountable governance is this. One of the primary jobs that our government has in this country is trying to ensure that the needs of the people are met on a very basic level. For example, and I've told this to the other classes and I tell it to you all, and some of you military guys who've traveled around the world already know what I'm getting ready to tell you. We live in a country where we don't give a second thought to getting a nice, safe glass of drinking water out of our spigot or out of the faucet out here, the cooler out here in the hallway at our school. It's almost as though we expect it. Well, I want to assure you, we're one of the only countries in the world who have that luxury. There's no other country in the world where clean water is so readily accessible. There are people, and one of my students is a young man in my night class last night. He's a young German gentleman who's over here coming to school, and he talked about, the fact that France and Germany and a lot of those countries over there, you don't drink water out of the spigot. You just don't do it. If you don't drink bottled water, you don't drink. Because the water that comes out of the spigot into your home is not safe to drink. And so we're one of the only countries in the world who doesn't give much thought to getting a nice, safe glass of water out of our spigot and that kind of thing. And that is in large response to the government trying to make sure that our basic needs are met. And there are others. Our government, and you can say what you want to about our social programs, but our government tries to make sure that nobody goes hungry, that nobody freezes to death, that there are not people, large sections of our population who are in desperate need of services and who don't get them. All right, and that's kind of what our government does, and that's responsible governance. And there are large sections of population in other countries who don't get services, who need them. And what happens in those countries is they become very disenfranchised and very disgruntled, and bang, the next thing you know, what he said. You've got a terrorist cell starting. You've got a training camp going. Because I promise you, when Al-Qaeda moves in, after they have their initial purge, they begin to try to take care of the people and meet the people's basic needs. One of the first things they did when they started taking over towns in Syria was they got the electricity back on, they got the water back on, and they try to get the trash pickup going again. They started meeting those basic needs after they had their initial purge and killed off a bunch of the people and scared everybody to death, because they wanted these people to go back to normal life and go back to work, because working people are doing something productive that they can take, that they can tax, that they can just take, they can get. And if you're sitting on your hands afraid to do anything, or you don't have food, or you can't work, then you have nothing for them to take, and then you're not beneficial to them anymore. So, there's an angle to it, but they meet those needs. And they meet those needs because they realize that they can turn you with them and against your government, because your government isn't meeting the basic needs of the people. So the first thing the Americans try to do when they go into a country, is to establish and to encourage responsible governance, where you don't have large sections of your people who feel alienated, who feel like they aren't getting any services. Second one, respect for human rights. Respect for human rights. Respect for free speech, freedom to assemble, democracy, and they encourage what our country is founded on, the rule of law. The rule of law.
Did you just list all 5 of them?
Say again?
Did you just list all 5 goals?
No, that's that's all elements under respect for human rights.
Okay, can you say them again, please?
Yeah, those are all just elements under human rights. That is speech, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, democracy, and the rule of law. Those are all number 2. All of those things are important. Whether or not you like what the protesters are protesting at a particular event or rally is certainly up for debate. The fact that they have the right to protest or rally peacefully in this country provides us with a positive outlet to be heard. Does that make sense? Provides us with a positive outlet to be heard in this country, which is very positive. I think it's what keeps this country going. You don't necessarily have to agree or like the people who are protesting, but it gives them an outlet to have an opportunity to have their voice heard. It gives them an outlet, a peaceful outlet to show our leaders that they're not happy. You know, whether it's the late 60s, early 70s, and you're talking about Martin Luther King and his rallies and his walks to show the government, about racial inequality, or it's the protesters standing outside Donald Trump's rallies saying that he's racist and that he's bad for the country and whatever. You may not like one or any of those groups, but the fact that they have the right to do that gives this country a positive opportunity to express themselves without going into conflict and causing social chaos. So those are a good thing. Number 3 is respect for civil rights. Respect for civil rights. Civil liberties. Respect for civil rights. One of the biggest issues that I have with this one is most Muslim countries refuse to allow women to have the same rights and opportunities as men. A woman can't drive a car in a Muslim country. If she's seen driving a car, and see, this is kind of, some of this is a little shady for me. Y'all might know more about it than I do. If a woman's seen driving a car alone in a Muslim country, she's broken the law and subject to discipline. She can drive the car, but her husband or a male counterpart has to be in that vehicle with her, is my understanding. I think that's right. As long as she has like a brother, a father, a husband with her, she's probably all right. But if she's in that car alone, well, that's ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous. So engaging them and encouraging civil rights, encouraging them to empower the women of their country, encouraging them to empower the minorities of their country, encouraging them to respect the differences of other folks. Number 4. Goal number 4 is balancing security and transparency. Balancing security and transparency. Somebody explain that to me, balancing security and transparency.
Only showing you what you need to know to keep you safe, not showing you everything they're doing.
Say that again.
Only showing enough to keep the public happy and safe, not showing them everything they're doing.
Yeah, and so there's pieces about what you said that I really like, and there's pieces about what you said that I want to change up a little bit. There are pieces of information that the government doesn't share for strategic reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the government has begun to acknowledge since 9/11 that knowledge is power. So they try to inform the public with as much information as quickly as they can and as much information as they can release up to a point that doesn't jeopardize their operations, because they have acknowledged that knowledge is power. And to be real honest with you, in order to be very, very effective at counterterrorism, they got to have more than this. They have thousands of operatives in the field, but that's not enough to be effective at counterterrorism. To be effective at counterterrorism, where they get most of their leads, where they get most of their information, where they get most of the direction that they get is from folks like you and I who are just paying attention. And if they don't create an awareness environment to where people know to look, pay attention, watch, and report, then they don't ever get any leads. So they can't kind of just keep shoveling the manure and keeping people in the dark, right? They have to acknowledge that knowledge is power, but they don't give away up to their strategic operations until that operation is over. Make sense? So they balance the need to know with or their need to transparency with their need for security. And number five is upholding the rule of law.
Holding what?
The rule of law, upholding the rule of law. Upholding the rule of law, obeying the laws of every court in the world, and bringing terrorists to justice. That's the ultimate goal. Showing folks around the world that terrorism and people who commit acts of terror are held accountable. Now, they do this through building security partnerships. I have 5 areas where they build security partnerships. Five areas where they build security partnerships. And number one in building security partnerships is accepting varying levels of partnership. Accepting varying levels of partnership. So what that means is that some governments and government agencies may only participate a little bit. I'll give you a for example. This one came out just the other day. I told this to you all in class on Thursday, and the French president sometime over the weekend made a statement. He said, I would like to acknowledge that the French people and the Belgian people are behind in our counterterrorism measures. And we would like to say thank you to the United States for all of their help over the past few days since this last terrorist attack in Belgium. While we are not as far behind as the Belgians, we both realize we've got work to do to get caught up. The French were always participating, but they were never invested, right? They were just kind of, it's like if you were at the pool, you just barely had your feet dangling over the side with your toes in the water, right? You weren't all the way in. You were just kind of over there kicking a little cold water. Same way with the Belgians. In fact, the Belgians probably just went up and touched the water to see if it was cold. They really weren't in it at all. But now they realize they're going to have to change and the Americans were like, okay, if that's all y'all want to do, hey, we'll share, we'll work together as much as you want to work together. It's all right. And then after their terrorist attack, and after that terrorist attack in Belgium, those two countries realized they're going to have to jump in the pool. So the nature of that level of trust and cooperation changed, and it got much deeper, and it got deeper in a hurry. The Americans were ready to step in and start. In fact, I heard this morning on the radio that American intelligence has already ID'd the guy in the white coat with the hat. We know who he is. We just got to find him. So, yes.
What technology did they use?
To ID, they said, and this is what they said this morning, I'm sure it was facial recognition. They said that guy was somebody that the United States counterterrorism teams were already familiar with. And then they named his name, but it's an Arabic name and I can't repeat it. So I'm sure they used facial recognition software in order to identify this cat and match him up to the files that they already had. So, and you can't imagine what a difficult feat that is to use facial recognition photo on this guy who's wearing a hat the way he's wearing that hat. You know what I mean? Unless they got a better picture of him looking up at the camera or turning, the shot they got of him is not the best shot to do facial recognition on. So they got some good software, but I'm sure that's what they used. I mean, I can't be 100% sure of it, but it has to be what they've done. Number 2, they leverage multilateral institutions. They leverage multilateral institutions. Now let me tell you what that means. Because I thought that meant something, and when I got to reading on it and I'm trying to understand it, it meant something completely different from what I thought it meant. So I want to explain to you what utilizing multilateral institution means. It means that when they go to France to help the French people with their counterterrorism activities, they don't come in and say, all right, we're the Americans, we're taking over. Let's show you how this is done. They go in and they go into the French counterterrorism office and they say, all right, show me where you're at, show me your technology, show me your stuff, and let me see what I can do to help you. Okay? And so what they do is they use the people and the technology and the infrastructure that's already there and form that partnership with them because it saves on manpower and it saves on money. Right? You know how you're watching on these movies, these U.S. government movies where the government walks in and swings the door open and says, we're here, we're going to save the day. That's not exactly how they do business for real. You know, they go in and they evaluate what's there and they use what's there. They use the manpower that's there. They use the people that's there. I'm glad you get my jokes, dude. You're the only one. And so they move along. Which tells me something's wrong, might be wrong with me and you, I'm not sure. All right. And number 3, they use the whole government for effect. I think you get them too, I just don't think you acknowledge. He acknowledges, he can't help it. I think Primer gets them too, I just think he looks at me and won't acknowledge, he won't laugh. They use the whole government for effect. Now let me tell you basically what that means. Using the whole government for effect means that you use the right tool at the right time for the right job. Now that sounds real easy, but it's not always so cut and dried when you're dealing with terrorists. One of the last flubs the Americans had was these 2 homegrown terrorists we had out in San Bernardino, right? They had tons and tons of warning signs and tons of opportunities, but they didn't see it. So they're constantly evolving and trying to get better and working on doing things a little differently. But they try to use the right tool for the right job at the right time to get the desired effect. Okay? And that's using all of government. Defeat terrorism, particularly ISIS or Al Qaeda, without undermining our credibility is number 4. Defeat ISIS or Al Qaeda or ISIL, whatever you want to call them, without undermining our credibility. Nobody in the world wants to trade being afraid of ISIS for being afraid of Americans. If that makes sense. The anti-terrorism campaign is designed to defeat ISIS without undermining our own reputation, our own goals, without removing ISIS and putting us in their place. Trading fear of one group for fear of another group. We don't want to be the group that they fear. We like to be respected. We're not much on being feared. Unless, of course, you are ISIL or Al Qaeda or Hezbollah or Iran. And then we prefer you fear us. And number 5. They do their best to present the USA as a hardened target. Somebody help me understand what that means. They do their best to present the USA as a hardened target.
It means we're more prepared, that we're not going to let them come easily and attack us.
Okay, you're not going to come easily and attack us. We're not going to back down. What else?
Like it'll be, pretty much a hard target for them to hit. Like,
Our defenses are up. It's not going to be easy.
I was thinking too that like maybe, okay, we've been targeted and this is what we've done. So when we go in to help other countries that we can, we know what we're talking about.
Right. I agree. How do we present ourselves as a hard target, what do? And I'm getting ready to tell you 3 things that they focus on, and one of these things, some of you are gonna go, no, they don't, but really, they do. It's just a different focus. There are 3 things really that we do.
We're more proactive than reactive.
Say again?
We're more proactive than reactive now.
Absolutely, that's absolutely our theory. And proactively, the first thing we do is focus on our rail, public transit. Second thing we do is focus on maritime and ports. Rail and public transit. Second thing we do is focus on maritime and ports. And the last thing we do is focus on our borders. That's where everybody's gonna holler, no we don't. I'm not talking about immigration. I'm talking about counterterrorism. Focusing on the borders for immigration is a completely different topic. So, now, there are several overreaching goals. There are a bunch of them. There are 12 overreaching goals that the Counterterrorism Task Force have. These overreaching goals, what they say when they say overreaching is they're trying to encompass all of the aspects of terrorism, of counterterrorism, okay? These overreaching goals are trying to encompass all of the aspects of counterterrorism. And there are about 12 of them. Number 1 on the list, and by far the most important, is to protect the homeland. I don't need much explanation, we got it. Protect the homeland. Job 1. Our people need to feel safe. Number 2, protect American people, both home and abroad. That's why it's important that you read before you travel. If you're going to travel to another country, it's important that you read what the government puts on about travel alerts to other countries. You need to be aware of where you're going and what the dangers are to those other countries. I told you all the other day, I have a nephew who's going to, I found out, I talked to him this weekend, he's going to, when he graduates here in the summer, he's going to New Guinea, spend 2 years. He's going to be a math teacher in New Guinea. One of the first questions I asked him, have you read any of the travel advisories for New Guinea or the surrounding countries? Well, no. Don't you think that's where you ought to start? Well, no. I do. You better go to the government website and pull them up. Read them. Find out what you need to be aware of. Find out what you need. You may know what you need to avoid in those, right? Number 3, protect American interests. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, it is in the best of American interest to protect the oil flow that comes out of the Middle East. Because those of you who have a pickup truck sitting in the parking lot cannot afford $15 a gallon gas. I got a car and I can't afford $15 a gallon gas.
And my school days would be over.
But that's what would happen if we don't protect the interest of the oil flow that comes out of the Middle East. You're talking maybe $20 gas. And I don't know, I'd hate to know what the gas price is for a gallon of gas in England, France. It's still high. Is it really? You knew more about it than I. $7 or $8 a gallon. I can believe that. I would have to drive a moped at $8 a gallon. That's unreal. All right. Number 4. Disrupt terrorist activities. Disrupt terrorist activities. That's why they concentrate on their training grounds. That's why they concentrate on their safety meetings. That's why they concentrate on their operations. They want to do as much to disrupt terrorist activities as they can. Number 5, degrade their capability. Degrade their capability. Now that's military. You know, we've been talking about doing a lot of stuff up to this point that might be spy, like kind of spy stuff. But degrading their capability is almost purely military. You're talking about flying in and blowing stuff up and destroying stuff and knocking stuff out. It's hard to train new militants if you ain't got nowhere to train them. So you degrade their capabilities. The funniest thing I've ever seen in my life is watching those guys roll up in the back of a pickup truck. You know, they roll up 15 pickup trucks deep, and all those guys stacked in the back of a pickup truck. No protection. Number 6. Ultimately, to defeat terrorist operations. We win most of the battles. We don't win them all. Occasionally, because of the level of participation we get from other countries around the world, we lose some. Occasionally, due to even though our best efforts, we have homegrown terrorists who sneak by. Number 7, prevent terrorism development. Now you're getting into psychology. How do we prevent terrorism development? I think the first thing you have to do is find out why people are joining ISIS by the droves, don't we? What social, psychological, economic, what need are they having met by joining ISIS? What need are they not getting met in the situation that they're in? Why are they joining? So you're going to have to do some psychology work there. You're going to have to address some social issues at that point. Now, the other piece of that is that you are going to have to, when you're talking about preventing terrorist development, is you're going to have to talk about how you're going to stop the explosion of social media that the terrorists seem to have mastered. Their best recruiting tool, I understand over the weekend, watching the news broadcast, their best recruiting tool is the violence that they put on social media. For whatever reason, it draws young men like crazy. They said that they were recruiting like crazy whenever they were posting those beheading videos. Every time they would post one of those beheading videos, they'd see a spike in recruitment. The violence was drawing the young men. The violent videos that they show where they shot all those people and burned them, spike in recruitment. So the violence that they're showing on the social media and the propaganda that they send out. I understand on the news this morning, I didn't get all the details, but ISIS sent a text to a whole group of males in come on, just where the bomb went off. Not France, but Belgium. They sent a text. Thank y'all. I don't know why I can't never think of Belgium. They sent a group text over the weekend to a bunch of young men in Belgium that said, "Join us, fight the West." After those explosions. Now, how did they get those numbers? How did they get all that information to do a group text? They've given credit to Facebook. They say that they downloaded all that information and compiled all that information from mining through Facebook off of people who have open accounts in the Belgium area.
People list their phone numbers on Facebook.
And people list their phone numbers on Facebook. So they sent out this huge group text to all these thousands of males, and they targeted specifically males, not necessarily females, but the males. how are you going to combat that type of social media campaign and counteract that type of violence? What are you going to do? And that really, you know, if degrading their ability, their capabilities is all military, then preventing terror development has got to be all psychological and all social. Number 8. I would have thought this would have been number 2. On my list, it would be number 2. But number 8 is prevent the acquisitions of WMDs. What's a WMD?
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapon of mass destruction. Again, don't you all agree? On my list, I think that's number 2. Right after protect the homeland is number 1, and number 2 is prevent acquisition of WMDs. And then we go down from there. I'm not sure I put that at number 8.
Tell me Facebook was before that.
Well, that's my spin on that. They don't specifically say Facebook, but you can read between the lines and you know what they're doing. Number 9, eliminate safe havens. Easier said than done. I'm not sure you can eliminate safe havens anywhere or everywhere. I think you can get rid of some of them, but I think there will always be some safe havens. I think our counterterrorism measures has been very effective at making the terrorists scatter. Because if we find too many in one place for too long, we have a tendency to blow it up. And they know it. So they don't never, if they do a bunch of them get together, they don't stay very long till they disperse because they figure a bomb's coming. Number 10, foster permanent partnerships. Foster permanent partnerships. Again, here's one of those things that sounds like it's not that big a deal, but it is a big deal. The relationships between America and a lot of countries in the Middle East is very shaky. Very shaky. One of the most amazing coalitions I have seen in my lifetime that the American government pulled off was pulled off during the first Gulf War by the senior George Bush. After they invaded Kuwait, and it looked like they were going to invade Saudi Arabia, George Bush did a masterful job at putting together a coalition of Middle Eastern countries to stand up against Saddam Hussein, which had never happened before because the Middle Eastern countries don't like each other, let alone America. They're all jealous of each other. They're like a bunch of kids. You got something I ain't got, so I don't like you. Right? So, well, since I can't have that, I'll get this. And now they're all jealous of each other, and they really don't like each other, and they don't get along. So, the senior George Bush putting together that coalition was an amazing, amazing thing. And what he did was he held the Middle East accountable for taking care of each other. We'll come in and help you, but we're going to just demand that you all be involved. You have some skin in the game, right? And so he just did a super job putting that coalition together. And then his generals, later on did a tactical job. I think Schwarzkopf, bless his heart, is dead and gone, but I think he was one of the great masterminds as far as generals go of our lifetime. I don't know that there'll be any more like him. Petraeus was pretty good, but I think Schwarzkopf was even better than him. So you had a lot of things that we did really, really well during that first incident. But building those permanent relationships in the Middle East is not easy, is my bigger point. Because those countries don't like each other, let alone the Americans. And so building permanent partnerships and lasting friendships is not easily done. They get mad at nothing. About the only country we have a fairly steady relationship with is Saudi Arabia, and it's suspect. They get mad at us, but they don't ever get so mad that they walk away because they know that one, they have to sell us oil, and two, that we need the oil, and so they like the money better than they care about getting their feelings hurt. Create a counter. Number 11, create a counter to ISIL ideology. I'd be interested to know what that is. A counter. You know, for every yin, there's a yang. For every up, there's a down. A counter to the ISIS ideology.
Are we referring to just particular one terrorist group?
Well, basically what they're saying in this counterterrorism is what I told you at the beginning of class, and you may have, I don't know, you may have come in just a minute late, and that is this. Our counterterrorism operates under this assumption. Whether it's Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, what are some of the others I mentioned? That bunch down in South America, whatever they are all unique and individual, right? They're all very individualized and very unique in a lot of ways. However, they're all propagating the same ideology, the same vision. So when you start talking about one, our government after that doesn't really make a distinction. They could all be Al-Qaeda, they could all be ISIL, they could all be whatever. They make a distinction for the public because it matters, but from a counterterrorism standpoint, there really isn't a distinction because what they're trying to fight is this ideology, and they all share this common ideology, the common push. And number 12. Deprive the terrorists of any enabling means. Basically, in a nutshell, what that means is we want them to have to hunt for dinner. We don't want them to have a vehicle. We don't want them to have a cell phone. We don't want them to have any enabling means to do anything. We want them to have to concentrate on simply surviving. How would you, the number 2 ISIL leader, who was an Al-Qaeda leader, now he's ISIL, whatever you want to look at it, he got killed in Iraq. What was it, Thursday or Wednesday? Friday, maybe. Got killed Friday. How would you like to be riding down the road in your vehicle, minding your own business, and out of nowhere, these helicopters make you stop on the road, and these dudes jump out of this helicopter on these ropes and surround your vehicle? That's what happened to him. He thought he was anonymous riding down the road doing his own thing. The helicopter in the road slowed the vehicle down. The other 2 helicopters pulled up. The special forces rappelled out of the side on the ground. They give him some orders. He doesn't comply. They fill him full of holes. They wanted him alive. That's what they wanted. They were trying to take him alive. And he wasn't going to have no part of that. So he did what he did, and now he's full of M14 holes or M16 holes, whatever they were using. But he's gone. Now, one of the other pieces of information I'm going to give to you today, and I've found a good place to stop after I give you these next couple pieces of information, is that the Arabian Peninsula is the finance area for all of these terrorist groups outside of Iran. Iran is financing these terrorist groups, especially Hezbollah and Hamas. That was the other one I was trying to think of, Hamas. Hezbollah and Hamas. They are financing, Iran finances them like crazy. They send a lot of money to them. However, the other opportunity they have to finance themselves is off of the Arabian Peninsula through oil. Remember I told you all the other day about the Americans got wind that the ISIL was selling oil in the black market, and they researched it and followed them and discovered however many tankers it was they had, tanker ships, and they caught those tanker ships coming back from a run empty and sank them. They're done. ISIL has no more capability to sell any more oil. Now they can sell a few truckloads here and there, but nowhere near like they were selling on those tankers. They can't. They just can't move it. So it's done. their capability to generate money is greatly diminished because of that. They still are making more, money off of that, Arabian Peninsula. I mentioned to you again, the East African hotspots is Somalia. That creates turmoil, keeps things tore up on the east coast of the continent of Africa. It keeps everything tore off from settling down because that lawless country in Somalia provides a base and a safe haven for Al Qaeda then to spread out from there. Now, this is a good place to stop because when I get into it next time, we're going to switch gears on Thursday and talk about one more thing, a little something different. Anybody have any questions? Questions? Clarification? Need to know anything? I'd like to know something from you all. I heard on the news this morning, there's a petition being passed around to allow everyone going to the Republican National Convention to open carry.
Over 50,000 signatures on it.
Do what?
They've got over 50,000 signatures on it.
Got over 50,000 signatures on it. I would like to know if you all think that is a good idea or a bad idea.
That's plumb ridiculous, especially with the fighting and stuff they already got going on in the Republican Party.
I agree.
I heard on the TV this morning that all three politicians deferred. They were all three asked, would they be okay with that? And all three of them deferred. You know who they deferred to? Secret Service. You're right. They deferred to whatever the Secret Service says is what we'll be okay with. That's what all three of them said.
No.
Yeah, but I'm sure the Secret Service, if they haven't said no, they're gonna say no. But, so are you in agreement that there shouldn't be guns with Republican National Convention?
I don't think there's any basis for having them there.
Well,
No, really.
well, but why not?
Well, I mean, you're gonna have heavy security anyway, because come on, it's Hillary Clinton. It's politicians, they're gonna have.
Well, but now this is the Republicans.
Well, I don't know who's who, but anyway, they don't, none of them spark my interest.
Well, I mean,
Why is Secret Service is going to be working security there? They're the only ones that need to have the guns.
right,
That's
okay.
what I'm saying.
So then let me ask you the next question. How does that differ with arming yourself at a school? Should all students be able to open carry at a school if they want to? Liberty
Yes, they should.
University said so.
There's no armed guards here at the school, so yes, you should be able to.
At ours,
If
there
they-
are.
Well, at ours, there's not. There's a security guard, but he's not armed.
So how does it differ?
He's on his own.
That's the one I'm talking about.
It differs because there's no one here to protect us. There, you got Secret Service there to protect you.
All right, y'all have a great day. I'll see you all on Thursday.
Y'all have a good one.
All right.
There are some people here that have some
Like I
issues
tell them all
that,
the
yeah,
time,
I need
man.
a little. I've gotta get
Flies for what?
I gotta go over to.
So now I can ask you about how the trip was, and I answered all that answer, right?
Meeting. My group.
It's been like that. Feels like you.
I gotta get.
Oh, I was like mad.
You pounded them, I'm
And they said y'all had to take taxis.
Yeah.
Like y'all didn't even
The
have,
bus-
the
the
bus
bus
left
dropped
y'all.
us off.
And
And
left.
like,
That was a scare for real.
$1,000.
Right.
I could remember.
Following that.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Tomorrow about 1:30? Does that work?
Yeah.
You know where my office is?
Think of something.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right, I'll see you there.
Mr. Massey,
Yes.
I'm curious, do you think the difference in that, what you asked would be training?
About carrying guns here, you know, like here or at that? No, what I'm trying to get, what I want to throw out to folks is, if it's all of a sudden not okay to open carry in an event like that, why would it be okay to open carry anywhere? Why would it be okay to, I would think that would be the primary place you would open carry. But I'm against it for a lot of different reasons. You know, I don't think we ought to be a community of vigilantes. I think we have to rely on the rules of law, right? And so I am very suspect of public carry. I'm very suspect of allowing people to have concealed weapon permits, because I think it provides us with opportunities to be vigilantes, and being vigilantes is not good. We've already been through that. You know, the old West, and you know, we catch the cattle rustler and hang him on the prairie and not have a trial, and we've already done all that, and we know what it leads to, right? And we, you know, in the deep South, you had slave patrols and all of those kind of things, and I don't think it's conducive to our society, because as long as the vigilantes have a good heart, you're in good shape. But whenever you get a bully who all of a sudden hides his being a bully behind being a vigilante, now you've got a problem. See what I mean? So the bigger point I was trying to get across and get everybody to think about is what we need versus vigilantism and versus open carry is we need to encourage our lawmakers to put more police on the street, you know, to put more security cameras, to do more to make our country safe from a law and order standpoint, not necessarily a vigilante standpoint. Because I don't care where you're at, whether you're at the Republican National Convention or at Bluefield State, a mob with guns is a mob with guns. Don't you think?
I think that's where mine went with the training thing, because it seemed like they think it would be better to carry it because
Yeah, well, and it could be, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case. The couple that we've got here, the two armed